It is time to count down my top 10 movies of 2023. Before I'm accused of leaving off some great movies, I want to agree with you. I almost certainly have not seen my favorite movie released in 2023. There were over 35,000 movies released this year, and I've seen 60 of them, so about 0.1%. That's roughly the same as seeing 1 out of every 600 movies released. There physically isn't enough time in the year to see everything that comes out, and that is the great thing about these lists. Everyone's is going to be a little bit different. You're almost guaranteed to hear about a movie that you might love that you haven't seen yet. Before I begin the countdown, I wanted to quickly revisit my 2022 top 10 as it stood on January 1st, 2023. There hasn't been much movement since I released the list last January. The only addition is Avatar made the cut this time around, and it kicked out All Quiet on the Western Front. Now these lists are totally fluid, and every single time that I look at them, I want to move stuff around. The only thing I can say for sure is that all of these movies are great, and they all get my stamp of approval and are still worth checking out. As for 2023, I had a really hard time with this year's list. There never was a movie that jumped out that I just kept coming back to that was the definitive best movie of the year. Every night for the past week, I have spent studying the movies that I watched and rearranging my top list. That means that the movie that I have ranked highest today may be different tomorrow, and was definitely different yesterday. As always, getting this list out on January 1st means there's a lot of movies from 2023 that I have just not seen yet. With award season coming up, a lot of the movies that are expected to win the Oscars and the Golden Globes, they're just now coming out and I haven't seen them. So I am 100% confident that next year when I revisit my 2023 top 10, it's going to look quite different. Now here are a list of movies that I think could break into my top 10 that I just haven't had a chance to see yet. All of Us Strangers, American Fiction, Blackberry, The Boy and the Heron, Godzilla Minus One, Poor Things, Suzumi, Thanksgiving, The First Slam Dunk, The Iron Claw, When Evil Lurks, and Wonka. And now, here are my current top 10 favorite movies from 2023. It is impossible not to have your heart warmed by watching Paul Giamatti's grumpy old teacher slowly turning over a new leaf as he is left to babysit a group of spoiled rich kids over Christmas break. This movie looks and feels like it came out in the early 1970s. It's a bit slower paced than most modern movies, so it takes audiences a bit of time to warm up to the flow of the film. But the characters are all so well developed and so likable, and it's going to leave you with a warm and happy feeling. I have yet to meet somebody who watched this movie who did not leave a fan. I have seen a lot of Nicolas Cage movies, and I can't think of one where I enjoyed his character more than his character in Dream Scenario. The premise to this movie is wild. Cage is a college professor who isn't well liked, and he's generally kind of forgettable until he starts appearing in millions of people's dreams around the world. The plot unfolds quickly, and it is impossible to guess what is going to happen next. There's this deep social commentary about cancel culture and instant fame, but it's also just a fun movie watched at surface level. There are enough unanswered questions to give the audience a lot to discuss when it ends, and on top of that, it provides some very unexpected hilarity. Not many movies made me laugh harder than this one. Now, it isn't funny all the way through, but when it's funny, it's really funny. At one point, this was my favorite movie of the year. Now, I'll admit I am a Christopher Nolan fanboy, and this was my most anticipated movie of the year. It is a technical marvel and masterpiece, and the fact that it was done with no CGI is absolutely mind-blowing. The plot is dense, and the number of characters is pretty much uncountable. A lot was packed into this 3-hour movie. Now, while I enjoyed the journey, it took a lot out of me mentally, just trying to keep up with everything that was going on. I definitely want to see it again, but it's the kind of movie you really have got to be in the right mood for. Where The Holdovers left me with a warm and happy feeling, Oppenheimer left me with a feeling of despair. The scene of the bomb exploding midway through the movie is one of the most on edge I've ever been watching a movie scene. And that conversation between Einstein and Oppenheimer towards the end of the movie was very eye-opening and very, very heavy. The longer I sat with Barbie, the more I enjoyed it. It was clearly the 2023 box office champion, and it had the biggest cultural impact of any movie that came out this year. The movie is just fun and happy, and it features the most striking visuals of anything else that I saw in 2023. I stick to my original assessment that Ken was in it a bit too much, and honestly, I'm going to be a little upset if Ryan Gosling wins an Oscar for Barbie, because the whole point of the movie is how hard it is for women to live in a patriarchal society. That message resonated worldwide, and Ryan Gosling Gosling winning an award is just going to drive that point home further. Even when a female-written and directed film full of incredible female performances takes the world by storm, it's the man who gets the recognition for the role in the movie. And something about that just doesn't sit right with me. Regardless, Barbie is an excellent, fun movie, and it deserves all the hype that it's getting. It wasn't even close. This was by far the best horror movie of the year, and it was made by a couple of guys who did YouTube videos. There were a couple of traditionally scary scenes, and they were heightened by the unexpectedly great camera work. But what makes this the best horror movie of the year is how many ways there are to interpret what happens in the film. While I personally took it at face value, but I have read things online about how it's more of an allegory for the social media era and how everyone is constantly interacting with everyone, but they feel more alone than ever before. This is a creepy and inventive and original movie, and when it ends, it's going to leave you with a bunch of questions and a sense of dread, the way a good horror movie should end. Kelly Freeman Craig really shocked me with her first feature film, The Edge of 17. She was able to make me relate to a teenage girl in a way that I did not know was possible. She did the same thing here with a preteen girl. Now, while I was familiar with the book of the same name, I had never read it. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret is my favorite coming-of-age story of the year. It features a cast full of likable characters in relatable situations and has equal amounts of heart and humor. This is one of those movies that is going to be enjoyable for different reasons to everyone in the family. I think even if you took away the incredible music and the other bits of nostalgia, I would have still loved this movie. There is nothing I like more than when a movie about a thing that I know nothing about, in this case basketball shoes, has me invested in the journey. Everyone talks about the star-studded cast, but to me, none of these performances felt like they had to be played by the person who was in the role. I think the movie would have worked just as well with a bunch of no-name actors. This is an underdog story about a paradigm shift that happened in the world of marketing and sports apparel. Stories like this only happen a couple of times a generation. The fact that arguably the most famous athlete of all time, Michael Jordan, is the centerpiece of the movie, and yet we never see his face and you barely hear him speak, just blows me away. This is a fun, fast-paced trip down memory lane, giving the audience an inside look at how Nike became the biggest name in sports. This is the most divisive and least crowd-pleasing movie on the list. Ari Aster made one of the scariest movies of all time a couple of years ago in Hereditary, and he followed it up with an unsettling cult film, Midsommar. So I had to see what he was going to do next. Beau Is Afraid is unlike anything I've ever seen before. It feels like a movie that David Lynch or Charlie Kaufman would make. The entire movie, I was on the edge of my seat because of how tense and uncomfortable every single scene was. It is the best on-screen portrayal of anxiety that I have ever seen. The movie is broken up into multiple parts, with the first being the most groundbreaking and most uncomfortable from a filmmaking standpoint. Aster had a lot to say, and I'm not sure that every message landed perfectly, but enough of it did to make this a movie that I could not quit thinking about all year long. This movie isn't for everyone. This movie isn't for most people. I just can't believe that Ari Aster had the guts to make a 3-hour movie that's gonna scare off 90% of its audience. It is bold choices like this that make him one of the most interesting filmmakers around today. I cannot wait to see how he pushes the boundaries next. They somehow did it again. They followed up the most original and groundbreaking superhero movie to date about the most rebooted superhero ever, and somehow once again made it better and more visually stunning. Historically, I've not been a huge fan of movies that don't stand on their own and that end on cliffhangers, but this was just too much fun to leave off of the list. The story builds on the original, introduces so many new characters that are all a lot of fun, and it is just a marvel to watch. Now, I personally am so burnt out on superhero movies that I didn't even see Guardians of the Galaxy 3 or The Marvels or Blue Beetle, but opening weekend I was there to see Spider-Man. This isn't just one of the most impressive and entertaining superhero movies of all time. This is one of the most impressive and entertaining animated movies of all time. Before we dive into my #1 film of the year, there are a couple of movies that I want to give props and shout outs to that didn't quite make the cut, but they could have on a different day. The most impressive action film of the year, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. The movie that made me laugh the most, Joyride. An emotional juggernaut about a complex situation where everyone acts with dignity that I don't think I'm emotionally intelligent enough to accurately review, Past Lives. A surprisingly enjoyable 6th entry in a franchise, Scream 6. A sci-fi movie with an important message, They Cloned Tyrone. A Black Mirror-esque movie that will inspire the next generation of filmmakers, proving that they can make an excellent movie if you've got a good story and no money, Artifice Girl. And the I can't believe this is a true story, Naiad. And finally, let's talk a little bit about what is my current favorite movie of 2023. I kept going back and forth on whether this was my favorite movie of the year, and at the time of this video's release, it is. It is one of the rare movies that as soon as it ended, I was ready to watch it again. Now, it is a sequel, but it is not required viewing at all that you have to see the first film to enjoy it. Missing is a movie that just should not work. It is basically one big gimmick. Everything we see throughout this movie is seen through a computer screen or a phone screen or a doorbell camera, stuff like that. The acting varies wildly, with some performances being incredible and some feeling pretty amateurish. And there is no mistaking that this is a movie. Even though it plays out as a found footage film, because of the performances, it just doesn't really feel real. But even so, I was just as invested in the events and the characters as if these were real events and real characters. It takes a great writer to be able to write a story and make every single step of the journey feel like something that a real person would do. Our heroine knows how to use a computer, and she is an excellent private investigator. She uses every technology at her disposal to try to track down the person she's looking for. There is a surprising amount of emotion told through the movements of the computer mouse on the screen, and while it doesn't feel like a movie that is filled with computer and digital effects, I think both the editor and the visual effects team are the unsung heroes that added so much to the movie with what we see on the computer screens. The attention to detail is unlike anything else that I saw this year. I was also shocked at how many twists and turns happen throughout this movie that I never saw coming. There is a lot of foreshadowing that happens that I completely missed on my first viewing. Watching it a second time, though, opened my eyes to stuff that I missed. This is a fun, fast-paced roller coaster ride that takes its gimmick and it turns it into a fully realized story that became a movie that I can't help but recommend to everyone. This isn't the type of movie that wins prestigious awards. It's just a fun thriller that you don't need to be a film lover to enjoy. This is creative filmmaking at its best.